listening to the 23 Personnel Podcast, a Texas Tech athletics podcast where food and sports clash at the goal line. Here are your hosts, Spencer and Michael.
What is everybody? Welcome back to the 23 Personnel Podcast. I am your host, Spencer, joined by Michael. Michael, what's up, man?
I'm here, and I guess we're going to talk some basketball, if we must. Talk about the Sunday that was. We could talk about Friday first. There were some good things that happened on Friday, but Sunday was it was rough.
It's abysmal,
I will say. Yes. Tough way to end. You know, that most seasons end on a loss, but losing on a combined 79 points with the two basketball teams is a little bit harder to stomach. How are you?
I was it's pretty down Sunday evening. I won't lie and say like I projected Texas Tech to go deep into the tournament. I didn't look up the projection for the game against Alabama before. So I wasn't like I wasn't going to be like necessarily heartbroken had Texas Tech lost on Sunday. It was just the manner in which you did it.
I did look up the projection. Do you know what it was?
I don't know what it was.
It was a 1-point loss. So I got online Saturday and looked at the Haslametrics projection, and they had Texas Tech as a 82 to 83 basically loss to Alabama, which went with the gambling line, which I think was 1.5 in favor of Alabama, and maybe even slid to 1 at one point. So it was, even with the current team, the current squad, everybody in the room thought it would be a one-possession game. And, you know, those are just metrics. Those are just people making lines when they have to make lines for, I don't know, 64 games in a weekend. But it was just, it was a little bit crazy. Now, what was good about not good, but at least with the men's game, I kind of saw it coming within the first 10 minutes. It felt like, oh, I think I know where this is headed. And so you could prepare yourself and just kind of ride the rest of it out. And it didn't, by the time the game was over, it was what it was, as they say. But yeah, I went into it thinking, man, should be a close game. Let's see what we can do here. And then it seemed like very quickly that it wasn't going to be. And then I still watched the whole thing, though. I don't know why. Red Raider through and through. That's me.
Yeah, no, I watched the whole game against Alabama. But let's back up a second. Let's start Friday. Let's go chronological. You had a game in there, first round game, a 12-5 potential upset. I think a lot of people were Texas Tech was a trendy pick to be upset in that spot. Akron, as we talked about coming into this game, had a 10-game win streak. They were super hot. They had won 10 straight, 19 of their last 20. They won their conference tournament. I mean, they went 29-5, 17-1 in conference play. And for a little bit, like it was kind of close for a little bit, but you had a very good shooting night. You shot 55% from three, 64% from the field. Akron couldn't hit anything, especially up close. Petty had just an unbelievable game. He finished 24 points, 9 of 14 from the field, 5 of 7 from three. Mosley chipped in 16 of his own points, 7 of 8 from the field, 4 blocks, and 4 rebounds, in only 26 minutes. Watts, like he's one of those players that like will finish a game with productive measures, and then afterwards you'd be like, I can't stand to watch that guy play for us. But then like you go back and look at the box score, like, well, he had a good night. 14 points, 6 of 8 shooting. He did have 4 turnovers. He's been a little prone to turnovers. Only 2 of 5 from the free throw line. Fouled out with like 9.5 minutes to go. And you're like, well, past him, there's not like a lot of depth with size and experience. You've got Akuntak in there on the bench that could come in for a little bit. Ben Boye, I get they play different positions mostly, but like, I don't know. It was just it was weird to see him foul out so early. You're like, well, that may not be wonderful for us. And then just to feel so like against, like squarely, like this guy should walk home on Sunday. So like he's just so, like one of those interesting players, in that like, one, I think it was going to be difficult to live up for the 1-to-1 comparison to D5, right? And we looked at the stats earlier, late in the season, but earlier, and they were fairly comparable to what D5 did at Texas Tech and what D5 was doing for NC State. I think D5 was shooting a little bit better percentage-wise on more volume, but roughly the same points and rebounds and production between the two of them. I've never felt as irritated with D5 that I can remember that I ever felt with Watts, but they were putting up the same numbers. So maybe that just goes to show, like, we were just always going to be unfairly harsh on him because he wasn't D5. And it's not like he came in and bumped Williams out of a roster spot. Williams left first. Anyways, all that to say, like, if you look at a box score and see what Watts did, you're like, that doesn't really align with how negatively or poorly I thought of him at the time of the game. Which we'll get to Sunday, because like it was 10 times worse on Sunday, it felt like. But it wasn't just it wasn't a Watts problem. What were your thoughts on the game? Texas Tech ends up winning this one 91-71. They ran away with it there at the end, avoided the 12-5 upset. But what were your thoughts?
That was a frustrating one, and I feel the same way. I think the hip thing to do is to pile on Watts a little bit. I try not to do that, but he does have some tough stretches, and just the way this game ended. So he fouled, or the way his time in this game ended, he fouled with 10:08 left, and then turned the ball over immediately after, and then got his 5th foul with 9:42 left. So
that's a rough 20-second stretch.
That was, yeah. I mean, and I didn't go back and look at the tape, but I think McCaslin was probably trying to sub him out, but didn't even have time to sub him out before he got his 5th foul. So from 10:08, from 10:09 left, he went from having 3 fouls to having 5 fouls at 9:42 left, and committed a turnover, and the turnover resulted in points. And when he went out, Texas Tech was only up by 5. It was 64-59. And then they end up winning by 20. So I'm not sure what that tells anybody or what that means. It would just seem like a very close game up until that happened, and Mosley came in and really stepped up and played really well. He didn't have the greatest night on Sunday, but didn't really. I didn't want to say need him to, but didn't expect him to, and it probably wouldn't have mattered even if he had. But I think that the frustrating part of this game was kind of how Watts went out, just not playing smart ball, getting 2 fouls within 30 seconds, and being out of the game in a tournament game with just barely under 10 minutes to go. And you're a starter, you've got to be smarter than that. And you've got to take care of the ball a little bit better than that. And every time I see his number of turnovers, I think like, well, I thought there was more than that. And that's why I think we've all got to kind of slow our roll and try not to pile on the kid too much, because he does make mistakes, but I don't think he makes as many as we think he does. I do agree that I don't think he should be shooting threes as much as he was.
He did shoot a lot of threes.
Yeah, I mean, he only shot 1 that night, but I've just got Sunday burned in my head. And so, like you said, you look at the stats, decent night, but just feels like gave up a lot when it mattered. And I mean, really, Texas Tech's defense was bad in the first half. And I think it was partially to do with him. I think people were beating him off the dribble and they were getting layups. Akron, like you mentioned, I mean, we're just really fortunate that Akron couldn't make a stinking layup. They would have had another 10, 12 points on the board if they could make a layup or finish at the rim with any sort of contact. I don't know. I'm sure they wish they had all those back, because they were getting the penetration that they wanted. They were getting the shots they wanted, and they just weren't falling. And Tech was, I think, very fortunate. Now, they did end up winning by 20, so maybe it wouldn't have mattered, but I think we'd have been looking at a much different game if that had gone differently. But yeah, that defense was just not there in the first half. They did button it up a little bit more. I think Akron ended up starting to shoot threes a little bit more than they were in the first half. Yeah, they only shot 8 in the first. No, wait. No, I got that backwards. They shot 11 in the first half and only 8 in the second. But just had a bad shooting night, as well as, which is all you can hope for. But
yeah,
man, it was one of those frustrating games. And then you look up, holy cow, okay, we're up by 20. So I think it was a 15-2 run or something right after Watts went out. And that was a lot of Petty was just going off. He and Mosley were having a great, couple of great possessions, several great possessions during that stretch. And I don't want to not talk about Christian Anderson, because he's the best player on the team, and he still shot 50% for the night, never missed a free throw, 18 points. He sat for 1 minute, maybe had 2 turnovers, and was holding the ball. I don't know how many, I don't know how much dribbling he did and how much time he had the ball, and he still only had 2 turnovers.
Yep. You win that one 91-71. You get matched up with Alabama, who defeated Hofstra, a 4-13 matchup. Same 20-point spread. They beat Hofstra 90-70. So we were going to be last game tipping off on Sunday night. Last game of the second round. Michael mentioned Haslametrics had this as a narrow 1-point margin of victory for the Crimson Tide. For those that watch the game know that's not even close to what happened. You got absolutely bullied on the offensive glass. I guess when Alabama was shooting, it was their offensive rebounds, your defensive rebounding in the first half. They didn't have a bad shooting night. First half, they finished at 44% from in the first half, but it felt like they had so many possessions where they got multiple multiple attempts at it because you couldn't grab a rebound. They were, I don't remember the exact number, but I remember thinking it. They had, oh gosh, I wrote it down somewhere. It's probably in a message buried in Discord in the game day thread. They had something like, hold on.
We had what?
Rebounds, 47. So they probably had like 18 rebounds within like the first 10 minutes of the game. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is absurd what is happening. They finished up, they out rebounded you for the game 47-35. You're like, 12, that's not, I mean, that's more than you probably think it is. In the first half, they out rebounded Texas Tech 30-16. And they had a 12-6 advantage on the offensive boards. They didn't miss much. They shot 44% from the field, 45 from three. They only averaged shooting 35% on the season from three. You gave up 19 made three-pointers. Texas Tech has a program record that you tied 3 times this season at 17 made threes. And they made 19 on you. Pairing that with your very, very poor shooting night, you shot 34% from the field, 16% from three. You were 4 of 25. Got this stat from Mainville and Discord. It ties the worst Texas Tech has shot in any game with 25 or more attempts in the stat head era, going back to at least 2004. 16%.
Well, and that's partially because and we didn't even mention Atwell in the first game. So Atwell had a great first game, 4 of 6 from 3, 5 of 8 overall, 15 points. He, I think, had 3 shots in the first half of the Alabama game. And I don't know if maybe only one of them was a 3. They just could not find him or would not find him. It was a lot of Watts doing a lot of dribbling and then getting the ball taken away or tied up or missing a shot. So it was frustrating, very frustrating offense to watch. But yeah, nobody had a good shooting night at all. But Petty had the best. I mean, not Petty. Atwell had the best one. He was 2 of 5 on the night for 3. Actually, technically Watts did, I guess, percentage wise. He was 1 of 4.
25% to Petty's.
Yeah.
Sorry, to Atwell's 20%. No,
Yeah.
no,
that's right. That's 40%.
yeah.
Right?
Atwell was 40, and then you had Watts at 25.
Yeah. Petty was 0 for 5 after having just a monster game on Friday, not able to really get that same type of mojo going. Anderson 1 of 7, and some of those were just, I don't know. He makes some of those, but some of them just felt like, F it, I'm gonna shoot a 3 as soon as I cross half court.
He finished 2 of 11.
Yeah,
the field.
on the night.
Yeah.
Yep. Really, really rough night from him, but I wanted to sing Atwell's praises a little bit. Horner coming off the bench, doing some pretty big things when it was obvious that Watts needed to get out of the game. He had 10 points in 21 minutes. He was our second leading scorer there for a while.
He finished with more points than Jalen Petty and Christian Anderson, Luke Bemboy, Josiah Mosley.
Yeah.
He finished third leading. So it was LaJuan Watts at 16. As much as we wanted to leave him in Tampa, he was your leading scorer of the night. Donovan Atwell 12, Leon Horner at 10.
Yeah. What hurts with Watts on this night, Texas Tech had they had 10 turnovers, and I say only because it felt like a lot more than that, but 5 of them were credited to Watts, and that seems generous. I feel like there could have been some more. I swear there were some tie-ups and some other random things that didn't really get called a turnover. And you could almost say a lot of those bunnies that were missed at the front of the rim when you're 2 foot from the basket, that's almost a turnover,
think
especially when you can't rebound.
I think that's what really exacerbated a lot of people's opinions. Like he ended up shooting at such a worse
He shot more than
rate.
anybody.
No, I meant like for this season, his shooting
Oh,
percentage
okay.
within 3 feet was like 30%. And that was a significant step back from even last season at Washington State. I was like, if you're within 3 feet, like you should be hitting 2 or 3. Like you should be shooting 67%, not 30%. And again, like if you look at his stat line in 25 minutes, so he played second least of all the starters, 16 points. He was 5 of 6 from the free throw line, 7 rebounds. He was the leading rebounder on the team, had assist, had a block, had a steal. And you're like, well, okay, he went 1 of 4 from 3. I don't love him taking 4 shots, but I mean, his 3 misses felt huge. His 5 of 14 from the field, like if you take away, if you take away his threes, he was 4 of 10. 40%. It's like, it's not bad. So again, like in the context of the game, watching the game, you're like, man, this guy is terrible. But then you look at the stat sheet as was like, I guess you had to be there for it. Because like to look at his stat sheet outside of the turnovers and why is he taking 4 threes? That's not like really his game, but you look at everybody else like, well, maybe he felt like he had to step up and try to contribute a spark because Atwell was only 2 of 5, Petty was 0 of 5, Anderson was 1 of 7, and Boye attempted a 3. Horner and Mosley also attempted a 3. Anyways, it's just you lose, and it was embarrassing. You got down, I think 32 at one point.
Yeah, I remember 30 for sure. So probably 32 was the worst.
You end up losing by 25. Alabama starters, nobody played more. Well, Filan played 35 minutes, but their shooters played 26 minutes. They were pulled out early. Reitzel, he was 6 of 9 from 3, at 24 points. Is it Mallet or Millette? I can't remember. He was 5 of 7. He added 15 points. Noah Williamson was also perfect from 3. He was 2 of 2. It's wild because I knew Alabama shoots a lot of 3. That they attempted 42 threes.
Mm-hmm.
So when they make 19, I was like, well, I mean, okay. They end up shooting 45% on the night, which is ridiculous. But at 42 attempts, too, is like, that's just insane.
Yeah, they ramped it up in the second half. They were almost 54%. They were 8 of 15 in the second half. They shot 27 in the first.
I was going to get frustrated that they attempted so many threes in the second half, and I looked at it, I was like, they attempted half as many in the second half.
Yeah, I didn't fully do the math or realize it, but I mean, Texas Tech only quote unquote lost the second half by 1 point, despite keeping up their terrible percentages. Texas Tech scored 40, Alabama scored 41, but Tech was shooting in the 30s overall, and they bumped their threes from 15% to almost 17% the second half. So I'm not even sure how that happened. It's impressive, honestly. But they did shoot 18 free throws in the second half.
You were 16 of 18 from the free throw line, yeah.
Yeah, which is crazy. That's something we've been begging them to do is get to the line, and it made this game look better than it was because of the free throws. And in the second half, Alabama was obviously pretty content just hanging around outside the arc. They only shot 8 free throws. So this is, I don't know, aside from maybe some random home games early in the season or maybe even some Big 12 games, but this may be one of the few games where Texas Tech actually shot, 9 more free throws than their opponent. That's pretty rare.
Yeah, it came down to the difference in points in first half to second half was free throws. Because you were 10 of 31 from the field in the first half, you were 11 of 30 in the second half. You were 2 of 13 from the first half from 3, 2 of 12 in the second half. But you were 3 of 6 in the first half from the free throw stripe line, whatever you can call it, 16 of 18.
Yeah, I mean, and like you said, credit to Watts. He was 5 of 6. Atwell 4 of 4. Petty 3 of 4. Horner came in, was 4 of 5.
Anderson was 2 of 2.
Yeah, a great night at the line, and you could just tell it was they took a slightly different approach the second half. It worked, but it still wasn't enough to pull them out of the hole. And Alabama just heated up. They shot even better. So what can you do? It's just going to be it's just not going to be your night. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, there's no good way to lose in the tournament. Like, you can say, oh, I'd rather get blown out and just be out of the game early. You were in this one. You could say I'd rather be in it to the very end and lose on a game winner from the other team. Like, because what else can you do? But like, you were right there, you got a chance to win. 6 one way, half a dozen the other way. It sucks. It sucks either way. I mean, I guess losing by like 10 or 12 points would have been like, well, you were out of it. You were in it for most of the game and then out of it late, as opposed to, down 32 at one point and shooting as poorly as you did, and having your last game go that way, not losing on a buzzer beater.
Yeah, and it's a 4-5 matchup. That's what hurts a little bit too. I know that numbers are just numbers and rankings are rankings, but everything pointed to this being a pretty close game, and man, it just was not.
You remember the last 4-5 matchup that kind of felt this way?
New
Year's Day, Michael.
Oof.
Sorry. So I at this point have not heard anything from Texas Tech roster or coaching changes or whatever. There were other programs that had some pretty immediate transfer portal news. As of late Tuesday evening, I have not seen anything for Texas Tech. Lots of players are going to be on the move, in and out. I'm gonna I don't know enough about basketball to say this guy has to go, this guy has to be better. Like, you can go get this guy. It doesn't feel like you were like landing whoever you wanted on the basketball side. Like, yes, you retained 2 All-Americans, and that can't be understated. Like, keeping those guys were probably as good as adding somebody else. If not, more so important to your success this season. But we'll see how the roster shakes out the next couple of weeks. And then over the summer, additions, subtractions, guys heading off to the draft, potentially early. Shakeups on the coaching staff. We're going back and forth trying to figure out if McCasland is being mentioned for any of these job openings. It feels really weird to see a team lose in the tournament and their head coach be announced at a new school the next day. like, man, like, what were you doing? Like, you were preparing to play a tournament game, but then if it gets announced that you've taken a new job, on Monday after you lost on Sunday, like you had that locked up in advance. Like you were splitting time there at best. I don't know. I've not heard that for McCaslin or any of the guys on staff, but I did see that the North Carolina Hubert Davis was not retained. They mutually parted ways. McCaslin was not linked to that specific opening. But that doesn't mean he won't be tied to other ones. With Texas Tech's budget capabilities, it's going to be difficult for a team to want to come in and outpay him and or pay a buyout. But, Texas A&M still exists. There are programs out there that will do stupid things with money.
Yeah, and McCaslin, obviously, he's going to get the benefit of the doubt, not having his first team All-American.
Yeah,
during this run, during this stretch, I don't want to speak for Spencer, but I'm trying not to mention that too much because we can still look at this game without Toppin being in it and still be disappointed and wish that they would have put up more of a fight, even though he wasn't there, and acknowledge that, yeah, if he'd have been there, it might have gone slightly different, but who knows? Maybe not. It may not have gone much different at all if Alabama's going to shoot like that. So who knows? Who knows any of that? But just want to acknowledge the elephant in the room that probably what most staffs and other people are seeing is, hey, he won a game in the tournament. He got his team to the tournament. They won a few more games after Toppin went down, but one, he got Toppin there, and two, Toppin's better this year than he was last year and continues to improve. So there's a lot of I'm not trying to pour gasoline on any of the
gas
possibly swirling McCaslin rumors or anything, but he's a great coach, and Tech's lucky to have him, and I hope that we can hang on to him for a long time.
Yeah. So the first weekend is over in the Big 12, not the Big 12, in the NCAA tournaments. With Texas Tech being out of it now, part of the allure to me in watching the tournament, especially games that I don't have a rooting interest in, is with the sheer volume of games that you can tune in late in matchups and kind of bounce around and channel flip and get a lot of really entertaining basketball. I don't have basketball fandom enough in me to turn on Georgia St. Louis and watch that game all the way through, or a Alabama Hofstra, Michigan St. Louis. I don't care. But if it's got like 3 or 4 minutes left and the game's within 5, I will turn any of those games on.
Yes.
And I will bounce back and forth, and I'll watch those all the way through to the end. Now that you're getting into the Sweet 16 and beyond, like the games are going to be less staggered, there'll be more staggered. There'll be a lot less crossover like that. You'll kind of have to pick your spots, like when you want to tune in, if there's a game on, if there's a team you want to follow going out. If you want to pick up a Big 12 team, there's 3 left in the Sweet 16 at Arizona, Iowa State, Houston, 2 1 seeds and a 2 seed. You want to talk about any of the other games you watched, or any moments you watched, or any of the Big 12 teams?
I was kind of glad that Texas Tech's game was the last one on Sunday, because I would not have felt like watching anything else. But I believe it was just before that I saw Florida lose on that court. I think they were in Tampa as well.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? So witnessed that. I got to see a little bit of the Kansas St. John's game where St. John's came back and their star point guard just drove to the bucket, made a layup, and they won by 2. And Pitino just acted like it was no big deal, went and shook hands, and they went to the that was it. I saw some great stuff. I think the best stuff I saw was Saturday night. Nebraska Vanderbilt was nuts. That was a great ending to that game. And Vandy was down by 3 and had a chance to win the game. It was 2.2 seconds left. I think Nebraska had called a timeout. I think Vandy was out. But anyway, 2.2 seconds left. They get the ball in just, the long side of half court. Guy shoots it from Vandy down 3, banks and rattles around the rim, and then rattles back out. It was as close of a dagger 3-pointer as you could come up with. And then the game after that, it was close until it wasn't. I forgot who it was. I'm already forgetting. But the game after that, the late one on Saturday night, was similar. I think it was back and forth, and then whoever won ended up, pulling away in the last just handful of minutes. And I am blanking on who that was. Was it Purdue versus somebody? Or no, it was Arkansas, maybe.
Arkansas beat High Point Saturday, 94-88.
That was it. Because they were back and forth the entire game. They were close. And that was like a 12-something matchup. I forget what that was.
It's a 12-4.
Yeah, a 12-4. So I'd been keeping an eye on that one, but that Nebraska game, of course, like you were pointing out, it was further into the game, so I was watching it instead. But yes, you're gonna kind of miss that a little bit. I think I'll be fine by Thursday, and just we'll get to the Lady Raiders game a little bit in a second, but just that Sunday, seeing those back-to-back losses was really tough. But I think I'll be good. I'll be good to go. Watch the little Spurs last night. Getting back into I'm already back watching sports. We're good. We're fine. It's no big deal. But at that moment at like 11:30 on Sunday night, I thought, man, I don't know if I'm going to watch any more of this tournament. And then I woke up the next morning and looked at the Sweet 16 and was like, yeah, okay. Houston, Illinois, yes. Texas, Purdue, yes. I mean, all of these look pretty darn interesting to me. I could come up with a reason to watch every single one.
Yeah, so let's go around the Big 12, and then we'll get to the Sweet 16. So Arizona was a 1 seed out in the West regional. Their first round game, Long Island battle for the iced tea. Arizona won. Did you see that back and forth on Twitter?
No, I didn't.
So somebody said like this is like the greatest matchup in round 1 because you're gonna get a Arizona versus Long Island battle for the iced tea, and then the Arizona tea brand came out and said you're gonna hate when you find out where we're located, and like they shared like a screenshot of their headquarter Google map, and it was like on Long Island.
Oh my gosh!
And then after the game, they retweeted and it said, after further consideration, we will refrain from making any further comment. Anyways, Arizona won that one, and they went on to match up with Utah State in their round of 32, won that one, so they're into the Sweet 16. BYU took on Texas in their first round. Texas was in the first 4 of the play-in games. Texas took down BYU, and then they ended up beating Gonzaga, so Texas is into the Sweet 16. Iowa State from the Midwest, they put it on Tennessee State by 34, 108-74, and then beat Kentucky by 19, and it was not close there.
Yeah, it was over early. Yeah, we've seen Iowa State do that to a certain team that we cover and follow. It was not pretty.
Houston, the 2 seed in the South, Idaho State, they beat them by 31. Then they matched up with Texas A&M in the second round, and then beat them by 31. So sucks to suck. But that was an intriguing matchup for Houston fans, Houston-based fans, between Houston and A&M. They are in Houston. Kansas, the 4 seed in the East, they had Cal Baptist in the first round, kind of snuck by them 68-60. And then Michael, you touched on the buzzer beater game winner there from St. John's, 67-65. So Kansas is out. BYU is out. TCU 9/8. Ohio State in the first round, 66-64. Moved on with a chance to face off with the 1 seed Duke. And Duke, I am not here to defend or stand up for TCU, but Duke got some very favorable whistles and calls there. They rolled TCU 81-58. So they are out. UCF, the 10 seed out East, they lost their first round matchup versus UCLA. So I mentioned it. Arizona, Iowa State, and Houston are the final 3 Big 12 teams remaining. Sweet 16 is set. We got 4 games each night, Thursday and Friday. Thursday night will be the 2 seed Purdue versus the 11 seed Texas. 4 seed Nebraska versus 9 seed Iowa. The 1 seed Arizona versus the 4 seed Arkansas. The 2 seed Houston versus the 3 seed Illinois. Those last 2 games, much more interesting to me than the first 2. And then on Friday night, you got Duke, St. John's. That one could be pretty good. Michigan, Alabama, UConn, Michigan State, Iowa State, Tennessee. So I think for me, from my eyes, there are 2 games each night that have my interest. Thursday would be Arkansas, Arizona, and Houston, Illinois. And then Friday would be Duke, St. John's. Oh, that's more of like, I would check the score on that one, or if it's close late, I'll turn it on. And then Iowa State, Tennessee. With my volunteer roots, I would watch that one.
Oh yeah, Tennessee, that's who beat Florida, isn't it? Is that right?
No, it was Iowa.
Okay, my bad. It's a lot of basketball. It's hard to remember all that.
Yeah. Lady Raiders.
Okay.
They played on Sunday.
Well, they also played Friday.
Yes,
so yeah, maybe we hit that one up first. They went to Baton Rouge, which, as we mentioned last week, top 16 seeds in the women's tournament get to host, which is extremely valuable and almost borderline unfair, but that's how it works. So game 1 was versus the 10 seed. Texas Tech was 7 seed. 10 seed Villanova. That was on Friday. Very close game, tight game the entire way. Won 57-52. Maupin got off to a really slow start. She was 0 of 5 on field goals. She only had 2 points, and they were both free throws, and they came within the last 2 minutes of the first half. So first half, she had 2 points. But second half, she went 4 of 8 from the field, and she was perfect again from the line, 5 of 5, including some late clutch free throws to seal it. And so she ended with 17 points, 15 of them coming in the second half. Danae Fritz, 5 of 6 from the field, 3 of 4 from 3, 13 points, and just a really big win. Collins had a rough weekend. She's Texas Tech's leading scorer. It's always between her and Maupin typically, and she struggled on Friday night. But thanks to Fritz stepping up and Maupin having a pretty big second half, they were able to get the win. But similar to the men, Villanova grabbed a lot of offensive rebounds late, but fortunately just missed some of those shots and were unable to pull away and win. But I think most of you know what happened on Sunday. They got the chance to play number 2 seed LSU, which is the number 5th ranked team in the country. The line on that game was LSU favored at 24.5. And I wrote this on like Saturday, Spencer. I wrote yikes! Exclamation point in the notes. Like, man, LSU minus 24.5. Yikes. And you came along later and said, guess that line wasn't big enough. And correct you were. It was a 101-47 loss on Sunday. So that was at 2:00. So you had about 5 hours to recover from that before Tech men lost by 25. So anyway, LSU, they're good. They're really good. Flau'jae Johnson is just incredible. She's so athletic. I don't know how many contested layups she made, and she wasn't getting a ton of calls. And there'd be 2 Tech defenders down on the ground. They weren't charges. They'd just be down on the ground, and there'd be all sorts of contact, and she would make the layup. Just really an incredible player. It's not like I've gone around and watched LSU basketball. It's really hard to root for their coach, but she's excellent. So they really made a huge deal about that on the broadcast, which is fine. I guess it was very much a homer broadcast. Texas Tech was mentioned only when they had to be. It was all about Flau'jae Johnson's last game at home. It was about this team, everything they'd done together, everything she's done together, and then it's at their home court. All of the things. It was pretty. That made it harder to deal with. But anyway, so LSU, they're really good. They came in, and I didn't know this until afterwards, averaging 95 points per game this season. 95. This is a women's college basketball team, not like the Charlotte Hornets from back in the day or something. This is 95 points per game. That's insane. And so it kind of hurt a little bit to realize that they broke a single season record with this victory that's been around since the late 80s. So the 2025-26 LSU Tigers team now has the most ever single season 100-point games in women's basketball, with 7, I believe. I think it was 6 before. I can't remember. But that also makes me think, I wonder if they went for that record, which doesn't sit well, but if you can't stop them, what can you do? So anyway, Tech was able to hang around a little bit in the first quarter. I believe it was 19-14. And that was due to some strangely favorable whistles. I think Maupin had, of those 14 points, she probably had 7 or 8 of them, and most of them were free throws. And you thought, well, okay, LSU rattled off to some crazy 14-2 start, and then Tech kind of battled back. And at the end of the first quarter, you're down by 5. You feel like, all right, this has a chance. And then the wheels just really fell off, man. Tech was turning the ball over, and every time they turned the ball over, I think LSU scored, or they almost did. So the second quarter, Tech lost that one 24-11. Third quarter was really bad, 33-7, outscored by 26 in the third quarter. And then the fourth quarter outscored 25-15. So just never won a quarter. It was the best it got was at the end of the first. But yeah, the LSU out rebounded Tech 44-27. They outscored them in the paint 46-12. A lot of that was on layups. Tech was shooting a lot of threes, but they weren't making any. Texas Tech had 19 turnovers. LSU had 10. The points off those turnovers is what's insane. So out of LSU's 10 turnovers, Tech only managed 4 points. But out of Tech's 19, LSU managed 32 points, which is 1.7 points per turnover. So almost a bucket every single time Tech turned the ball over, they would capitalize on it. And that goes to this stat, with Texas Tech having 0 fast break points on the day, where LSU had 24. It felt a little. This one felt almost worse because of how much of a home field advantage it was there. It was really tough to watch, and how much they were celebrating, and fine, that's great, that's good for them. But man, it was just a dagger seeing our team be the sacrificial lamb for this really great LSU team on kind of a dominant run historically. But just the Lady Raiders had to be on the other side of that. So that one, that's what made it frustrating. I did have to turn this one off. I watched it long enough to see if Mulkey took Flau'jae Johnson out of the game, and she finally did with about 8 minutes left, and which was great. She got to have her curtain call, which was good. But the way it was going, I thought she was just going to leave her in the whole game, and win by 60. So
close enough.
Yeah, close enough. Yeah, tough day. Tech didn't shoot well. They were, what were they? 22% from three, 25% from the field. Just nothing was going to stop LSU that day. But a great season for the Lady Raiders overall. A lot of the players are leaving, exhausted eligibility and whatnot. So it's going to be a very different looking team next year, and we'll see what Gerlich and the staff can do in the offseason.
Yeah, so that puts a wrap on the Texas Tech basketball seasons. Obviously, both sports have the rest of their tournament to play out, but Texas Tech is now done competing in that. They are now on to softball and baseball only, which we'll get to here in just a second. But any final thoughts on the basketball season, Michael? It felt like coming into the men's season, there was a lot of hype and potential, and this team could have a deep run in them. I was always a little hesitant to really buy into that. Like there was a slow start there. They were frustratingly inconsistent. They had some really great games, and there were stretches there where it was like, man, if we can see them put it all together and play like this more consistently, yeah, you can beat anybody. Obviously, when you beat Duke and Arizona and Iowa State and Houston all in the same season, 3 of those being on the road, you're like, man, like you can hang and beat anybody. You hang with and beat anybody. But then you go out there and you have games where you lose to UCF, you lose to, well, you had that 4-game stretch there at the end of the season.
Colorado.
I think
that Colorado game. I think Tech won, but they blew a 25-point
lead. Yeah, there was that one. There was just moments where you caught glimpses of this team has got some flaws in it that ended up being exposed. Obviously, they were put under microscope, exacerbated. What little cracks were there were broken wide open once JT Toppin went out and you didn't have an All-American there kind of doing what he does. If you eliminate that, or if that threat is eliminated, you can zero in on other, deficiencies. So I'm frustrated with the way it ended. There were I think opportunities throughout the season to kind of get on a roll and be a lot more consistent, to pull things together. It feels not wasted, but like you had another season where you had it's hard not to say generational, but like you had some top tier talent and outstanding production season wise, not only from Toppin, but from Anderson, from Atwell, flashes from guys like Mosley and Petty, to then for it to end the way it did. You lose 4 or 5 there at the end. Your last game you lose by 25, and it was never really close. It's just like, man, I hate how the way this season ended. And then you're going to have a whole lot more perspective on the women's team, but to start off the season the way you did, what was it, 20 straight wins, to then kind of again stumble there towards the end of Big 12 play, or at least be cooling down and slowing down a little bit, and then to end your season the way you did in Baton Rouge, losing by 54. It's just like, man, it's very disappointing how both these seasons ended.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty much there with you. I did not expect the Lady Raiders to make the tournament. I mean, that's one of the things that you can kind of go back and you try to put it in perspective. Hey, they made it to the tournament. They made it to the second round. They haven't done that in 13 years. Uh, it's an accomplishment. It's something that should be celebrated. But then it's it's man, it's just hard to celebrate that type of a beating. Even though historically this was a great season. Hopefully, this is something that can build some momentum. But then again, a lot of these girls are leaving. Pretty much all the ones I mentioned today are gone, and they were gigantic contributors and part of why you got to this point. So it is leaving a lot of question marks in the air, and the staff really has they bought themselves some time for sure with this year, but they're going to have a lot to prove next year. And I think I've really who they brought in last year. Nunez had some frustrating moments, but it was great to have an actual true point guard to lead this offense and not force Maupin to do it every possession. So she came in just 1 year, and Collins was incredible for 1 year here at Texas Tech. So I think there's some good momentum there. We've got our 7-footer Stephanie. I still need to learn how to pronounce her last name. She should be available next year. That shouldn't be a problem. Bristow's going to stick around, I hope. But that's really it. Sonogo's gone. Malone's gone. Fritz, Nunez, Maupin. They're Collins, of course. It's going to be a completely different roster next year, which is a little bit different than when I've probably 4 or 5 years ago, I really started following the Lady Raiders closer. And that's what's been nice about it is they retain, I think it's just how the women's game is, and NIL is not as influential as it is in the men's game. But you got to see the same players quite a bit more than you do in the men's game. And then this will probably be some of the biggest roster turnovers since I've kind of hopped on the bandwagon. But I think it was a great season. I hate that it ended with that particular game, but LSU is a juggernaut, and I need to see how far they go beyond that. I hope they wind up in the national championship or something with the kind of performance they put on, but who knows? And as far as the men, I think you and I are in a very similar position. I guess record-wise, after Toppin went down, the rest of the season kind of went like I thought it would. And I didn't expect it to end on a just completely lifeless blowout, but I did expect it to end on some game where Texas Tech wasn't hitting threes and couldn't get a rebound. And that's essentially what happened, but magnified by 10. So I think it was a very successful season overall. Like you said, some frustrating stretches where you got some really big wins and then some head scratching losses. But man, I felt pretty good about Texas Tech going into the tournament with Toppin, and then that injury happened, and it robbed him and it robbed us, and it's not fair and it's frustrating, but that's what we were dealt this year. So we'll see who gets to come back, who wants to come back, and when Toppin can be available again, and lace them up for 26-27.
Yeah. Speaking of juggernauts, let's talk about softball.
Woo.
We'll talk softball and baseball here, and we'll wrap it up here pretty soon. Softball now 31-2, 8-1 in Big 12 play. Move into sole possession of first place in the Big 12, number 2 in the national rankings, back up from number 3. Following their weekend series sweep versus the Knights of Central Saturday had a run rule, 9-0, and Sunday wrapped up the sweep with a 7-2 victory. Then they were on the diamond tonight on their way back, stopping off in is that Stephenville?
Yes.
Tarleton State. And they took down Tarleton State 12-0. So they are 31-2 on the season, coming back preparing for a Big 12 series home weekend versus Iowa State, Friday evening at 6, Saturday afternoon at 2, Sunday afternoon at noon. Unfortunately, even though they have the number 2 team in the country, there is no TV option for this one.
Yeah, not yet. Maybe they'll change their mind, but at least when I looked the other day, and sometimes it's, I don't know if it's just they forget. But anyway, if there's no TV listed, check ESPN Plus anyway and see if it's there. That's all I can say.
Potentially. And it felt like stuff like this used to end up on like the Texas Tech Plus or whatever they used to call your own owned streaming platform, but I think all that kind of got wrapped up and rolled into ESPN Plus. And then next midweek you have Tuesday the 31st at Abilene Christian, and then back home for a weekend series with BYU over Easter weekend. So it's going to start a day early, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 6 p.m., and noon. And that one, again, like Iowa State, no TV listed at this point, but that may get updated. Baseball has had a week. They've gone 3-1 since we last recorded. They took the weekend series at Arizona, 2 games of 3. Friday night, they won 9-5. They lost Saturday 14-6, then bounced back on Sunday to win that one 12-10. And then this afternoon, they took down New Mexico 12-2. So they are now 16-8 at 4-2 in Big 12 play. That is good for a 3-way tie for third. There's 2 teams tied for first, 3 teams tied for third. Arizona State and Kansas up there at 4-2 in Big 12 play. Your next games will be this weekend at TCU, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 6 p.m., 2 p.m., 1 p.m. Catch those over on ESPN Plus. And then you also play Abilene Christian on the 31st, but you will be in Lubbock, 6:30 first pitch on ESPN. And then your Easter weekend series will be versus Houston, also Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Well done.
I've got nothing specific to add. I wasn't able to catch any of these games. It's hard with basketball tournament going on, except for Caitlin Terry is her. But you got more production, more support from obviously more players. They're a fun squad to watch. Again, if you haven't caught on to college softball, it is a very entertaining game. Especially
fast
when
paced.
Good.
Yeah, fast moving. It's a lot of fun to watch.
All right, a couple things on football I want to touch on before we get to what do we learn and wrap this bad boy up. Spring practice is still going. Today was their first day in full pads, so progressing as one would expect, but that's coming up. And then Thursday, Texas Tech is hosting their pro day. And there was a name on this list that stuck out, Michael. And the handful of names is like, I forgot already that they were a senior or they had exhausted their eligibility. And one is participating in pro day that didn't even finish his career at Texas Tech. But pro day participants, offensive lineman Davion Carter, defensive line Lee Hunter, defensive back AJ McCarty, D-line Skylar Go Howard, Judah Banks, receiver Reggie Virgil, defensive ends Romello Height, Charles Esters, and David Bailey, punter Jack Burgess, corner Dante Balfour, defensive end Terrell Tillman, linebacker Jacob Rodriguez, tight end John Carlos Miller, safety Cole Wisniewski, receiver Caleb Douglas, linebacker Bryce Ramirez, quarterback Baron Morton, wide receiver Brady Boyd, wide receiver Jordan Brown. Yeah,
Jordan Brown.
that one. The one that transferred before the bowl game last season. Sorry, of the 24 season. Still participated for Texas Tech, having committed to Memphis or UNLV or whatever it was that he ended up going to. But we'll be back to participate in the Texas Tech Pro Day.
Red Raider for life?
I'm not sure who okayed. I mean, you don't want to, I don't know. This one feels weird. It feels like he's trying to capitalize on there being a lot of eyes coming to Texas Tech Pro Day. But
does he have a brother we're interested in or something?
I have no idea. But so that is your group participating in Pro Day. I did see a lot of information coming out about scheduled visits between Pro Day participants and NFL teams, specifically Romello Height, and just the vast number of teams he's been meeting with, which is a good thing. I did see some NFL teams, specifically the Kansas City Chiefs, tweeting out highlights of Lee Hunter.
Reggie Virgil was meeting with the Lions.
Yep. Getting a lot of
draft
analysis, analysts saying don't overthink it and draft J-Rod if he's there.
Yeah. I think that's good analysis.
And then guys like Skylar Gill-Howard, like, I mean, he's going to be a sneaky good pick, especially because a lot of people didn't get a chance to see him when all the eyes were coming to Texas Tech. He was already done for the year with his injury early in the season. Judah Banks was underrated, I think, again, because of Skylar Gill-Howard and Lee Hunter and AJ Holmes. I mean, he was a starter for last season's team. David Bailey, I think, may just throw a jersey on and jog around just to say he participated. There's almost no point in him being out there. Hope you get a lot of good showings, especially for guys like Cole Wisniewski, who didn't get to go to the draft. Sorry, not the draft, the combine. So that's happening on Thursday. Sure, we'll see a lot of Texas Tech content from that day and all the workouts. Did you catch the upcoming rule changes to targeting, Michael?
I guess did not.
Penalty enforcement. So
I saw you post this, but I didn't get a chance to click it.
So what they're going to do, they're changing the enforcement, how much time a player is going to miss after being disqualified for targeting. So for a player's first offense in the season, they will miss the rest of that game, but no more, no matter when it happens. So if it happens in the second half, it used to roll over, you miss the first half of the next game. First offense into that game, you're done. Or your disqualification, you've served your time. Second time, you will miss the first half of the next game. I think it still applies no matter when. You're going to miss a full game of game time. A third time, if you're disqualified for a third time during a season, you will miss the entire next game.
Wow.
So, and then this tweet from CFB King said no players were disqualified for targeting 3 times in 2025. So it's an exceedingly rare case. And you would hope that, like, with this kind of potential judgment, that, like, it will continue to curtail some of the targeting. However, it didn't happen at all last season that you had a guy get 3 disqualifications from targeting. But They are adjusting the penalty. I think one, you see a lot of guys that get the one and they miss, the first half of the second game, which like you can kind of make that make sense if it happens like late in the fourth quarter. Like, okay, he would have missed 2 minutes if this year's rule change was in effect. Like you kind of want to have him miss some time. But also take into consideration it as a first-time offense for the season, you miss the rest of the game you're in. Okay.
Yeah. I think I'm reacting live to this because I hadn't clicked the link, but I think I like it because I do think the targeting, I think they do a decent job of keeping it decently consistent. There's probably some times where they just call it textbook targeting because of the slightest leading with the crown, or they hit the bottom of the face mask or something like that. And I feel like those times, okay, you can kind of use some judgment and maybe let that go. The player was actually pulling up, or he obviously led with his shoulder, but then the offensive player moved last second, or stuff like that. You can't expect a player to make all those decisions real time. And I feel like as long as they're trying not to target, they shouldn't necessarily be called for it unless it's truly blatant. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I think this hopefully will kind of correct some of that, because a lot of times, like you pointed out, if there wasn't a single player last year that did it 3 times, then hopefully that's going to make this a little bit less of a game altering punishment when you get a targeting call on the first drive of the second half and then the player's not available the rest of that game and the first half of the next game, and the next game is your first playoff game or whatever it may be. So I'm open to them keeping the targeted rule as is, but I do like that they're trying to lessen the punishment a little bit for first time offenders. I don't know how else to say it.
So going through the comments, 2 main themes, well, 3 really. One, the picture they used for this tweet was of the hit from Texas against Arizona State and the bowl game and their playoff game a couple years ago. That wasn't called target. It was the controversial one that wasn't called.
Oh yeah.
So they were like, this wasn't even targeting. Okay. 2,
that's funny.
They said this wasn't really the rule change everybody was wanting in regards to targeting. It's like we wanted like a distinction between like incidental head
Yes.
and neck contact versus like intentional. And 2, like we need clear definitions of what targeting actually is, because the judgment is just it's too varied.
I swear I've seen some targeting called because, well, like I mentioned, they just stick to the letter of the law. Yes, the player's got his head down, but he's obviously leading with his shoulder, but his helmet graces the bottom face mask of a quarterback or something, and it's just, oh yeah, that's targeting by the letter. You've got to call that. And I'm like, do you have to call that? He was doing everything he could to not lead, to not do that. But, or I don't like the ones too where the face mask hits the face mask or stuff like that. That just doesn't sit well. There's no launch or whatever else they're looking for. It's just trying to make a tackle, and some helmets touch.
For those not watching the recording, Michael and I just did some potentially obscene hand gestures to each other. Anyways, let's wrap this up with what we learned, Michael. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right. Check in the notes section. It's empty, but I do want to touch on this. Obviously, those that are listening to the podcast, when you download it, you look at the art, or if you're watching on YouTube, it says this is not goodbye. It's looking at a picture of McCasland too, because the tournament's over, and it's, quotes kind of tongue in cheek, like it's I'll see you later. When the season comes to an end, like it's disappointing. I have no, like I said, no intel, no gut feeling or anything of that McCasland's leaving. That it wasn't about that. It was about us, Michael, that we are taking a little break. See, no, it's not because Michael's leaving the 23 Personnel podcast because he's got 3 kids. Wait, I have 3 kids. No.
Yeah, I was going to say that's you.
No. It's been one that we've been thinking about for a while, and it unrelated and uninfluenced from the Gauchos, but also like we've had this one kind of simmering for a little while. We talked about it. We will be back at some point, probably a little bit later in the summer, to touch on postseason play for softball, getting into the softball World Series and see what they're doing. We may be in around spring game time to talk about the football spring game and any basketball roster moves or stuff like that. We'll maybe back here and there, and then the plan is now to be back for fall camp and then get going for football season again. We're not going to drag out and do all kinds of ridiculous and like stretch out like baseball coverage or softball coverage or off-season restaurant sauce rankings. as fun as it, like, we just have our commitments have us focused elsewhere than to be messing around with that nonsense. So it's not goodbye. We're not shutting it down. We will be back. Can't tell you exactly when, but soon. We'll have something. And I mean, we're not going to just fade away into nothingness and never come back and just decide in the break that we wouldn't do that. We've been doing this for too long just to disappear. But for now, you're going to have to deep dive into your reading log, your books to read, your audio books in place of the 23 personnel. You'll get this time back to spend on furthering your own advancement and entertainment away from Texas Tech Athletics podcast. But anything you want to add on us?
I was shaking my head. I was shaking my head, which is great podcasting. I've just, 7 years into this, I've just really gotten so much better. But no, not a lot to add. Right there with you. We'll pop back in. This isn't goodbye forever, that's for sure. And when we do pop back in, we'll give you some heads up, probably via the Twitter that I don't know if I have the password for anymore, which is fine. I don't even know how to use Twitter anymore. Spencer's got it. We're set. But yes, just taking a little bit of a break, and we'll keep y'all updated when we come back, and reach out to us and keep interacting with us on the Twitters. Hey, appreciate the comment from Steve here. Appreciate y'all's time and happy for the time you get to spend with your family. Yes, that's definitely something we'll be doing. And I am currently reading Comanche Moon for the second time, just for...
You mentioned that.
Yeah. And
or that you
great.
You wanted to. You mentioned that you wanted to get that book back up.
Yeah. I started it, and funny story about that really quickly. Okay, what I learned here, I do have it actually of what I learned now. If you want to pivot, do you have anything more to add on this?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So since I'm reading Comanche Moon, I thought, I've never seen the miniseries, and it's got Steve Zahn in it, and it's got, is it Carl Urban the guy that played Bones and played Judge Dredd and stuff. Anyway, has Val Kilmer in it. I thought, man, I need to give this series a shot. And so by the time I figured out what streaming service it was on or something, I was going to have to rent it. And I thought, shoot, can I just buy it on a digital video disc? And I did. And so what was great was as I go to my Amazon package, I open the envelope and I pull out none other than a copy of Midway, the movie that they made, I don't know, 5 years ago or so. Woody Harrelson's in it. Dennis Quaid. Wait, no. Yeah, Quaid. One of the Quaids is in it. Not Randy. Dennis. Someone else. A couple other people. Really shiny looking movie. Kind of looks like Pearl Harbor. But on that DVD, on the back of it, there's a barcode that clearly says Comanche Moon. So what I learned is that was definitely put in the mail by some sort of robot, because they just read the barcode, no one noticed that this was completely the wrong movie, and then they shoved it in an envelope and sent it my way. But I did get the replacement copy this week. I'll watch it after I read the book. This is the first time I've ever reread a book. I've got a few more I want to read again, but this one really makes me want to read Lonesome Dove again. Like I might just roll right into Lonesome Dove after this one. I don't know. I may wait, but that was what I learned. I didn't think I had anything, but I did.
So you mentioned Dennis Quaid. You mentioned both Quaids, but Dennis Quaid. Did I tell you that I shared that he traveled to Corpus Christi when President Trump visited?
No.
He was in that show they put on down there at the port. He got called up to the stage real briefly too, and he said, I was like trying to multitask. I was at work, and then live streaming the thing on my phone. Dennis Quaid was there and got called up to the stage for half a second. I don't remember exactly. I didn't hear what he said, but
I can't remember if he's a Texan or if I know he lives here.
Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't remember for sure if he.
Sorry, Houston. He's born in Houston.
Okay, that makes sense. I just knew he had an association with Texans, but I didn't know if it was like Billy Bob Thornton, where everyone just, or Robert Duvall, rest in peace, by the way. That happened last couple of weeks. I don't think we mentioned it, but both of those guys, you kind of think, oh, well, they're maybe not Duvall so much, but Thornton, you're kind of like, well, he's Texan, right? No, neither of them are. They're just both associated with it because of some stellar acting they've done as, portraying Texans.
Because you mentioned like just all the connections there, R.I.P. to Chuck Norris.
Yeah. Crazy
Walker,
couple of weeks.
Texas Ranger.
Man. I just thought he would never, I thought he would outlive us all.
Yeah, I mean, it was going to be by his choice. I'm not saying like he ended his own life, but like all the Chuck Norris jokes which we had to introduce our children to. We had to say, hey, like, because like, what's the big deal? I was like, well, let me introduce you to Chuck Norris humor.
That was a heck of a time on MySpace, people.
He didn't get it. My oldest son did not understand it. I was like, well, you
missed out on for you. Yeah. You missed out on my headline quotes on MySpace.
Yeah.
In 2007. You would have really gotten it then.
Yeah, like he built the hospital he was born in, shook the doctor's hand, and drove his mom home. He wrote his own eulogy. He didn't die. He leveled up.
The only thing behind his beard is another fist.
Yeah, there were a lot of like roundhouse kick jokes too. But anyways, so yeah, I think that's a oddly fitting place to leave it for tonight.
We couldn't have scripted it any better.
Yeah. That'll do it for us here on the 23 Personnel Podcast. We will be back at some point, talk about spring football, basketball roster, and potential staff updates, and get you set and following along to the College World Series softball, hopefully with Texas in it. Until then, Michael, I'm Spencer. Catch you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to the 23 Personnel Podcast. Help us out by subscribing, rating the show, and leaving a review. Follow us on Twitter at 23 Personnel, Spencer at PuntSuck, and Michael at Michael_LBK. Be sure to catch the next episode. And until then, guns up and let the tortillas fly.